Hi, I'm Jason Gore for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to look at Richard Linklater's nouvelle VAGE.
Shelf.
Okay, here we are at Cannes. It's very early in the morning. Headed to a theater appropriately named after Agnes Varda. And we are here to talk about Richard Linklater's love letter to that era of filmmaking. It's his making of A Bout de Souffle, or Breathless, the Jean-Luc Godard debut film. In many ways completely changed how cinema behaves, with its jump cuts, with its rip from the headline noir elements, adopted into neorealist elements, adopted into Nouvelle Vague conventions that the Cahiers boys and girls were sort of championing at the time, taking aspects of American culture and European post-war culture and smashing them together just as effectively as he did with a smash cut. As my friend Thomas pointed out, the crazy irony of this film is the amount of time that they spent putting this one together dwarfs entirely what was done for the original production of Breathless. So you're watching the making of a film that's incredibly well done in terms of production design, getting the vintage cars together, these immaculate costuming, hair, performers just at the top of their games. Zoe Deutsch as Jean Seberg is transcendent. All of these things all coming together in something that required, look, back in the day when they were like taking postal sort of carts, hiding a camera inside and shooting along the Champs-Elysees so that nobody could actually see that there's a camera about. They got for free 1959 Paris for the 1960 release of the film. Here they have to spend so much effort to recreate that it just becomes a little bit sort of metatextually ridiculous. Thousands of people engaged in filmmaking in order to recreate something that just a few dozen kind of put together back in the original time period. It's a beautiful irony, but one I think not lost on Monsieur Godard, the late Monsieur Godard, who I have a complicated relationship with at best of times, as we're here at a festival that frankly, not only did he try to shut down at one point in time, repeatedly, but also one that he had a great deal of ambivalence. Look, Godard was a prick. That's not news. But he was also, that douchiness actually led him towards some incredibly effective and frankly immortal cinematic achievements. Breathless being just the first of many. I think by 68 he had completely lost his way. But that is a conversation for another day. We've seen something similar before with Redoutable, where Hazanavicius and Garel had a pretty fascinating dynamic, actually. You had a director who I think was at best bemused by Godard and his hijinks, and you had Garel, who's completely obsessed with the director. And the weird dynamic between the lead star and the director actually created this sort of frisson, this tension between them all. This is a much more, frankly, loving homage of what actually sort of took place in the shooting. The way that Linklater sort of puts together, first of all, shot gloriously on black and white 35, looks amazing. Each character stares directly down the barrel of the camera and sort of introduces themselves with almost mugshot-like subtitles underneath. And everybody's there. Chabrol, Truffaut, the producers, the various actors, Agnes Varda, and all the people from the various scenes within this sort of small cloistered community of aesthetes, of French filmmakers and critics, all realizing that Cahiers du Cinema wasn't just a mechanism for them to do reviews, but was a mechanism for them to change cinema itself. Absolutely hubristic, absolutely the hungry young man aesthetic, all at play. And I think a lot of people will be initially surprised that the dude that we know best from things like Dazed and Confused would actually take this on. But lest we forget how much Slacker itself changed American indie cinema forever. made an entire generation sort of pick up the cameras. It's an absolutely transformative moment in American independent cinema when it came out in 1990. Completely changed the landscape of what was and what was not possible, using the new technology of eventually leading into the sort of DV revolution, all of those elements, rightly or wrongly, the sort of DIY aesthetic, which was the same thing that you got when Godard was shooting with a Linklater out of sound sync and sort of treating cinema like war photography and treating it that you just go on and you just shoot and you capture. I mean, here I am with a gimbal in front of the Palais. It's not quite guerrilla filmmaking, but it's something like this would have absolutely been a dream to them. To be able to record sound, 4K video, and all of those elements all in one tiny little handheld device, I think would have been completely up their alley, and they might have created even more nonsense out of it. The film, again, I watched Breathless, the beautiful 4K from Criterion just before coming to Cannes, and the specific details. Look, I understand, these are filmmakers, their job is to get the props right, to get the scenes right, but it's so amazing how they recreate specific moments, and not as some sort of grand greatest hits thing, but you're constantly being reminded that you're seeing different perspectives of iconic shots. The running down the street, discussing the other elements, constantly discussing and quoting others, T.S. Eliot, etc., like they do in the movie. These are quotes of quotes. It becomes very postmodern in that sort of gloriously francophilic way. So you have a film here quoting another film that itself is quoting things like Bogart, all colliding, all being wrapped in this beautiful bow that is Nouvelle Vague. It was truly a new wave, but one obviously that had been sort of initiated by so much, including obviously Italian post-war cinema, including a general reaction to elements that were actually taking place within a sort of much more state French system, including finally in a post-war period getting a chance to see films that otherwise have been rejected by the Americans, be it John Ford, never really considered anything more than just a populist filmmaker, be it Citizen Kane, that they were instrumental in sort of propping up as the idealized vision of the young, precocious genius who wasn't going to take shit from anybody and was just going to actually make the film his way. They saw in Orson Welles a way forward. And it is fascinating to see the precociousness, the obnoxiousness, but the sheer determination of Godard to actually create his film, but also the just general derision of following anyone's rules. His hapless producer becomes very much an enjoyable watch, a comedy of errors. And the closest film that I can connect it to in terms of just reflecting the joy of film production is Ed Wood, this like sort of now I think underappreciated film by Tim Burton, who himself has become much less appreciated than in the past. But the fact of the matter is that moments, especially a beautiful scene in the pool where Bill Murray says, is talking to Johnny Depp's character, and like, how do you get it all this together? Like, all these people come together for you. All these people are there to support Ed and his sort of quixotic quest to actually get his film together. In a funny way, this is both connected to that and antithetical to that. What did all these people see in Godard that they weren't just quitting? I mean, everybody's on the verge of just saying, fuck this. But they stuck together and they made, advertently or inadvertently, a masterpiece. The editors questioning all this stuff. And yes, it makes it sound like the only person that really knew what the hell was going on was Godard, and you had to listen to him, and everybody else was just questioning his methods and the end result, and that only he could see the vision. I think that's obviously simplistic. But narratively, it works totally fine. We see ourselves along for a ride, a remarkable ride, into the world of the shooting of this film. And I genuinely think, as a way of getting a sense of the spirit, l'esprit of the Nouvelle Vague, of the new wave, this film does it as gloriously as anything that has ever been. And I am so pleased that Linklater got a chance to see it. He's had a remarkable year. He had a very, very auspicious debut at Berlin. And here just a few months later in this incredible location at the Palais du Cinema, he got a chance to see the most showcased, most French of French films, which for me just becomes near definitive exemplar of what it was like during that time period, about what the characters were like, about what it feels like to watch that film, and a reminder about just how avant-garde, how transgressive it was to make that sort of thing, and the complications therein, and just how if film is immortal, which is what they keep talking about there, this is another way of sort of contextualizing that immortality in a way that benefits not only Godard's legacy and the legacy of all of his collaborators, Truffaut, etc., Belmondo, Seberg, but also very much a reminder about why we love films in the first place. Félicitations, Monsieur Linklater. You did something truly, truly remarkable, and I truly hope that your experience of showing that film here was extraordinary as our experience of watching the film. For thatshelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on social media. We will see you next video. All the best. Take care.